Block 1. Picasso, Early Life Genius. Imagine a world where art was a language spoken in hushed tones, where tradition reigned supreme and innovation was a whisper, not a roar. Then, imagine a child born into this world, destined not just to speak that language, but to shatter its very grammar. This is the story of Pablo Picasso, a titan whose journey began not with a brushstroke, but with a gaze so intense it seemed to penetrate the very fabric of reality. Born in Malaga, Spain in 1881, Pablo Diego José Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno María de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso, yes, that was his full name, was a prodigy from the outset. His father, Don José Ruiz Blasco, was an artist himself, a professor of art and curator of a local museum. Picasso's first word, legend has it, wasn't mama or papa, but piz, short for lapis, the Spanish word for pencil. From his earliest days, he was drawing, an unquenchable fire burning within him. His father recognized this extraordinary gift, fostering it with meticulous care, teaching him academic drawing, proportion, and the classical techniques that were the bedrock of artistic training at the time. A young, intense Pablo Picasso, perhaps around 7-10 years old, intently sketching in a notebook, his brow furrowed in concentration. His father, a distinguished figure, watches over him with a proud but critical eye. By the age of 13, Picasso's technical skill surpassed his father's. Don José, in a moment of profound humility and foresight, famously handed his brushes and palette to his son, vowing never to paint again. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was an anointing, a passing of the torch to a genius already blazing brighter than his mentor. Picasso's formal education continued, first at the School of Fine Arts in Barcelona, where he was admitted at 14 after completing in a single day an entrance exam that usually took a month. Here, he absorbed the academic rigor, mastering anatomy and perspective. But even then, the seeds of rebellion were germinating. He chafed against the rigid curriculum, often skipping classes to wander the streets, sketching the vibrant life of the city, absorbing its raw energy and diverse characters. This direct engagement with the world outside the classroom was as crucial to his development as any formal lesson. At 16, he moved to Madrid, enrolling in the prestigious Royal Academy of San Fernando. But again, the institutional confines felt stifling. He preferred the raw immediacy of the Prado Museum, where he studied the old masters, Velázquez, Goya, El Greco, not to imitate them, but to understand their power, to deconstruct their genius, and to find his own path. Picasso, as a young man, standing before a masterpiece by Velázquez or Goya in the Prado Museum, a thoughtful, analytical expression on his face, perhaps sketching quickly in a small notebook. He wasn't just observing, he was internalizing, digesting, preparing to transform. His early works from this period, while technically brilliant, still largely adhered to traditional styles, showcasing his mastery before he began to dismantle it. The turn of the century marked a pivotal shift. In 1900, at just 19, Picasso made his first trip to Paris, the undisputed capital of the art world. This was the Bohemian epicenter, a crucible of radical ideas and artistic experimentation. Here, he encountered the post-impressionists, the symbolists, and the burgeoning fauves. The city pulsed with an energy that resonated with his own restless spirit. He was drawn to the Montmartre district, a haven for artists, poets, and freethinkers, where he quickly immersed himself in the vibrant, often impoverished artistic community. This was where he truly began to shed the academic constraints and embrace a more personal, expressive style. His early Paris years were marked by financial struggle, but immense creative ferment. He shared studios, often living hand to mouth, but his output was prodigious. He was a sponge, absorbing every influence, every new idea, and filtering it through his unique sensibility. This period gave birth to his Blue Period, a series of profoundly melancholic works painted between 1901 and 1904. A montage of several iconic Blue Period paintings by Picasso, showcasing their somber palette and elongated, mournful figures, perhaps with a subtle overlay of a young, reflective Picasso. The dominant blue and blue-green hues, combined with attenuated figures of beggars, prostitutes, and the downtrodden, reflected his own struggles and a deep empathy for human suffering. Works like The Old Guitarist or La Vie are haunting testaments to this introspective phase, capturing a profound sense of isolation and despair. This wasn't just a stylistic choice, it was an emotional landscape, a deep dive into the human condition that laid the groundwork for his later, more radical explorations. Following the Blue Period, his work shifted to the Rose Period, a warmer, more optimistic phase. Influenced by his new relationship with Fernande Olivier and a more stable living situation, his palette brightened, dominated by reds, oranges, and pinks. A vibrant Rose Period painting, perhaps Acrobat and Young Harlequin or Family of Saltimbanquis, emphasizing the warmer colors and circus themes. His subjects often featured circus performers, acrobats, and harlequins, figures on the fringes of society, yet embodying grace, agility, and a certain romantic melancholy. These works, while still representational, showed a growing interest in simplified forms and a departure from strict realism, hinting at the seismic shifts that were just around the corner. He wasn't merely painting what he saw, he was beginning to paint what he or them, challenging the very notion of objective reality. The raw talent, the relentless curiosity, the insatiable drive to understand and then reinvent, these were the foundational elements of the young Picasso. He had mastered the rules, and now he was poised to break them, not out of ignorance, but out of a profound understanding of their limits. This journey from classical mastery to personal expression was merely the prelude to an artistic revolution that would shake the foundations of the art world forever. His early life wasn't just a story of a boy who could draw. It was the genesis of a force that would redefine genius. Block 2. Cubism Revolution, Guernica. The stage was set. Picasso, having absorbed and mastered traditional techniques, then explored the emotional depths of the Blue and Rose periods, was now on the cusp of an artistic explosion that would fundamentally redefine painting. The year was 1907, and the art world was about to be rocked by a canvas that looked like nothing seen before, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. This monumental work, with its fractured figures, angular forms, and mask-like faces, was a violent rupture with centuries of artistic tradition. It wasn't just a painting, it was a manifesto, a declaration that art no longer needed to mimic reality, but could construct its own. But Les Demoiselles was merely the prelude to a much larger movement. Picasso wasn't alone in this radical quest. He found his intellectual and artistic counterpart in Georges Braque, a fellow painter with whom he forged one of the most significant collaborations in art history. Together, in the quiet intensity of their Parisian studios, they embarked on a journey that would give birth to Cubism. Together, in the quiet intensity of their Parisian studios, they embarked on a journey that would give birth to Cubism. Their goal was audacious: to dismantle the illusion of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional canvas, as prescribed by Renaissance perspective, and instead present objects from multiple viewpoints simultaneously. Imagine looking at an object, say a guitar. Traditionally, you'd paint it from one angle. But what if you could paint it from the front, the side, the back, and even from inside, all at once? This was the essence of Cubism. Objects were broken down into geometric facets, then reassembled, creating a fragmented, multi-perspectival view that challenged the viewer to actively participate in constructing the image. This wasn't merely abstraction, it was a profound rethinking of perception itself. Early Cubism, known as analytical Cubism, was characterized by its muted, monochromatic palette of browns, grays, and blacks. The artists deliberately stripped away color to focus entirely on form and structure, making the intellectual challenge of deconstruction paramount. A close-up of an analytical cubist painting by Picasso or Braque, highlighting the intricate geometric fragmentation and subdued color palette, emphasizing the intellectual rigor. Faces and objects became almost indistinguishable from the background, dissolving into a complex network of interlocking planes. Works like Picasso's Portrait of Daniel Henry Kahnweiler or Braque's Violin and Candlestick exemplify this intense period of formal experimentation, pushing the boundaries of representation to their absolute limit. Then came synthetic cubism, a phase where the artists began to reconstruct, to synthesize. They reintroduced color, texture, and most notably, collage. By pasting everyday materials like newspaper clippings, wallpaper, or even chair caning directly onto the canvas, they blurred the line between art and reality, challenging traditional notions of authenticity and artistic medium. These papier-collés were revolutionary, directly influencing future movements like Dada and Surrealism. Cubism wasn't just a style, it was a conceptual framework that shattered the very window through which art had previously viewed the world. While Cubism was Picasso's most profound innovation, his artistic journey was never static. He continued to explore, to absorb, to transform. Throughout his life, he revisited and reinterpreted classicism, particularly in his neoclassical period following World War I, where he produced monumental, sculptural figures harkening back to antiquity. He dabbled in surrealism, though he never formally joined the movement, his work often sharing its dreamlike, subconscious qualities. His relentless experimentation meant he could never be confined to a single period. He was a shapeshifter, constantly reinventing his artistic language. But perhaps the most powerful testament to Picasso's ability to harness his revolutionary vision for profound human commentary came in 1937 with the bombing of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War. Commissioned by the Spanish Republican government for the Paris International Exposition, Picasso was deeply affected by the news of the brutal aerial bombardment of the Basque town by Nazi German and fascist Italian air forces at the behest of Spanish nationalists. A stark, emotionally charged shot of the Guernica painting, highlighting its black, white, and gray palette and the anguished faces of the figures, emphasizing its anti-war message. In just a few weeks, he poured his outrage and despair onto a massive canvas, creating Guernica. This monumental masterpiece, painted in black, white, and gray, uses the fragmented, multi-perspectival language to depict the suffering of people and animals caught in the chaos of war. Distorted figures, a screaming horse, a bull, a mother wailing over her dead child, a soldier's dismembered arm clutching a broken sword, every element screams of agony and injustice. It is not a literal depiction of the bombing, but a universal cry against the barbarity of war, a timeless symbol of human suffering. Guernica became an instant icon, a powerful political statement that transcended art. It traveled the world, raising awareness and money for the Spanish Republican cause, and refusing to enter Spain until democracy was restored. Its impact was immense, demonstrating that avant-garde art could be profoundly accessible and politically potent, resonating with a universal message of peace and protest. Picasso had taken the revolutionary language he co-created and wielded it as a weapon against oppression, solidifying his place not just as an artistic innovator, but as a moral voice for humanity. The journey from the Blue Period's introspection to Cubism's deconstruction and finally to Guernica's searing indictment of war illustrates the incredible range and depth of his genius, proving that he was not only an artist of form, but also of profound human spirit. Block 3. Picasso legacy influence. Picasso's life didn't end with Guernica. In many ways, it only intensified. For the next 4 decades, until his death in 1973 at the astonishing age of 91, he remained an unyielding force of nature, a prolific artist who continued to push boundaries, experiment with new mediums, and relentlessly reinvent his aesthetic. His post-war output was immense and incredibly diverse, encompassing painting, sculpture, ceramics, printmaking, and even stage design. He would often work on multiple projects simultaneously, his energy seemingly boundless, his curiosity unquenchable. A montage of Picasso in his later years, perhaps working on a ceramic piece, sculpting, or drawing, showing his continued vigor and engagement with various art forms. His intense gaze remains. His later works often revisited and reinterpreted the old masters he admired so much in his youth, like Velázquez's Las Meninas or Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe, transforming them through his cubist and expressive lens. These series were not mere copies, but profound dialogues with art history, a way for Picasso to demonstrate his mastery while simultaneously asserting his radical individuality. He would create dozens, sometimes hundreds, of variations on a single theme, dissecting and reconstructing the original in a dazzling display of creative intellectual power. This was not just painting, it was an ongoing conversation with the past, recontextualized for the modern age. Picasso's personal life was as complex and tumultuous as his art, often intertwined with his creative output. He had numerous muses, wives, and lovers throughout his long life, each relationship often marking a distinct shift or influence in his work. From Fernande Olivier and Eva Goul in his early Cubist years to Olga Koklova and Marie-Thérèse Walter in the 1920s and 30s, to Dora Maar during the Guernica period, and finally Françoise Gillot and Jacqueline Roch in his later decades, these women were not just companions, but profound sources of inspiration, often appearing in his portraits, their changing visages reflecting his evolving styles and emotional states. A series of iconic Picasso portraits of his various muses over different periods, showcasing the evolution of his style through their faces. His relationships were intense, passionate, and sometimes destructive, fueling both his creativity and controversies. Beyond his personal sphere, Picasso's influence on the 20th century was simply colossal. He didn't just participate in modern art, he largely created it. Cubism, his joint invention with Braque, directly paved the way for virtually every subsequent abstract art movement, from futurism and constructivism to suprematism and beyond. His liberation of form and color, his challenge to traditional perspective, and his groundbreaking use of collage opened up an entire universe of possibilities for artists who followed. His liberation of form and color, his challenge to traditional perspective, and his groundbreaking use of collage opened up an entire universe of possibilities for artists who followed. He taught artists that they didn't have to copy reality, but could invent it, distort it, or reconstruct it according to their own vision. He was a master of self-promotion, a public figure whose celebrity grew exponentially throughout his life. His political engagement, particularly his vocal opposition to fascism and his later membership in the Communist Party, further cemented his image as a radical, an artist deeply engaged with the world around him. He became, in essence, the archetypal modern artist, rebellious, innovative, controversial, and utterly indispensable. His legacy isn't just in the masterpieces he created, but in the mindset he fostered. Picasso instilled in generations of artists the courage to break free from convention, to question everything, and to constantly seek new ways of seeing and representing the world.
His relentless experimentation wasn't just about finding a new style, it was about the very process of artistic inquiry itself. He showed that art is not a fixed destination, but an ongoing journey of discovery, a continuous dialogue between the artist, the canvas, and the viewer. When Picasso died, the world lost not just an artist, but a force of nature that had reshaped its visual language. His impact is immeasurable, his influence pervasive. Every time an artist dares to challenge tradition, to fragment a form, to see the world from a new angle, they are, in some way, echoing Picasso's audacious spirit. He didn't just change art, he expanded our very definition of what art could be, proving that true genius lies not in mastering the rules, but in understanding them so profoundly that you can shatter them, only to build something entirely new, something eternal, in their place. His work continues to provoke, inspire, and challenge, ensuring that the canvas of modern art will forever bear the indelible mark of Pablo Picasso.